Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Looking Deeper with Denise King Francisco, aka Dana, and the Reverend Sandra Harrick, aka Sandra. Hey, Sand, how are you?
I am great. How are you, Dana?
Really good. It's one of those auspicious days that, you and I grew up understanding what a feast day or a holy day is. And today is the feast day of the archangels, Michael, Uriel, Gabriel, and Raphael. So it's good mojo for our show
Very
tonight.
good mojo. Very good mojo.
Yeah. Just to let everybody out there know that the chat room is open. So if you would like to join Sandy and I in chat, please do. We would love to have you in the chat room for our show tonight, talking about what the seer sees. And part of the reason we're talking about that is Sandy and I are getting ready to teach a class in November, aren't we, Sandy?
We certainly are. And we've been waiting for this. We, kind of waiting for the energy to direct us, receive us, and support us in us representing it, not us asking to do it, but literally merging with them to have it really be channeled.
The title of the topic of the class that Sandy and I are going to be facilitating, it's a series called Subtle Mediumship. And you can learn more about that on the webinars page at schoolofsacredstudies.com. And as the title suggests, it's about mediumship and the subtle bodies that exist everywhere, the subtle energies that exist in every living thing and through every living thing, around, in, above, below. It's going to be a great series, and it will be via webinar, so we can have people gather from near and far, which we enjoy. So please have a look-see.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Sandy, how old were you when you knew that you were a seer?
Oh, God. That's a spectacular question that has an answer to I knew I was seeing something, but I didn't know that that's what it was called. So I would say I'm between the ages of 3 and 4 when I really actively was describing to my parents that I was seeing things. And it's interesting, I was talking about what I was seeing because I saw it, but it wasn't really talked about at that particular time, because I'm talking 1950 with, oh, you're a seer. It was, are you making it up? Well, maybe it's your angel, but more or less it was the boogeyman. So it wasn't always something that it was happy to see, because it was scary to see.
Mm-hmm.
How about you?
My first vivid recollection of knowing that I was with somebody who wasn't physically with me was when I was 5 years old. And my father was stationed in Vietnam. And I remember laying in bed one night with my pendant. I had a beautiful Sacred Heart of Jesus pendant that I wore. It was a gift to me from my grandmother. And I remember holding on to that pendant of mine so tightly and seeing a man who came to visit me quite often hovering above me. And I always say that he looked like W.C. Fields.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was that kind of a visage. And I remember putting the blankets over my head, hoping that that would take care of it and it would go away. And of course it didn't.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But like you, it was just suggested that maybe I was watching too much TV.
Right.
And because, in 1967, there was a lot of TV to watch.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because it is important for us to know that, at those ages, a child and we were still in the alpha state of the mind. We hadn't developed the beta rhythms yet that bring you out of that natural state of intuition and psychic phenomena where alpha really is a slower vibration and it flows inside of us like a very soft current of water. And so it allows us to see beyond the veil because we still kind of remember being in utero or before, or, being in that angelic place, being with beings. And we grow out of it actually more so than grow into it when we go into our beta rhythm. So, for me, being in alpha was such a natural state. And therefore, because it was such a qualifiable state as a child that I was already activated in, and I'm sure it's, the same with you, when I got older, I was able to visit it, or it maintained itself within me. So going into beta didn't get me out of it. It just it wasn't there as much, but when it was there, it was ripe. It was really potent. So, I wish there were people there that could have cultivated me rather than scared me.
Right. How old were you when you found somebody who could cultivate the gift?
Well, blatantly, I used it in the family. I was called if anything was lost, I could find it. So, then they knew I could see something, or tell Sandy it's lost and she'll go find it. So, I was a bona fide hound dog on my own, in my own house. And I took great pride in, following the intuition to find it. But I was 23, was I still 22 years old? 23 years old, late 22, 23 years old, when the phenomena of cultivating the psyche started, because it was becoming popular. That would have been, 1970. I got married in 69. So 71, somewhere between 70 and bona fidely 72, where mediumship was being more public because of psychic discoveries behind the Iron Curtain. Mediumship became a bit more, I would say, exposed because the Beatles brought over transcendental meditation, quite frankly, in the 60s. And because the Beatles brought transcendental meditation over to the Americas, we were exploring a lot of meditation, integration, and self-exploration. So, good news on the Beatles, that they were really responsible for bringing mindfulness to America, which then developed the psychic ability to, in meditation, then you see apparitions, or you want to go talk to spirits. I did not get the spiritual feeling like you did in Catholicism, that I was validated as a seer, even though in church I could see things. So it was literally when I say bona fidely 23 years old, where someone sat me down and said, "You got something, and what are you going to do about it?"
Wow.
So, and I also felt I had something that I needed to do something with. It became that urgent kind of feeling of, how do I work with this and develop it? And there's that place of express myself with it, have it identify me. I think that's very important to be able to say it, that it identified me. I didn't identify it. It gave me an identity, and I had to figure out what that identity was. And that was very frustrating. How was it for you in that frustration, Dana?
Well, like you, it was frightening, because not everything that a seer sees is pleasant.
No.
And not having anyone to mentor me, growing up, not out of anyone's fault, but because it wasn't available, until I met Father Cussler when I was 15 years old, who gave me a prelude by, letting me know that he was an ordained exorcist who understood perfectly well
Right.
what I was talking about. Well, that only added scary to the scary, that an exorcist knew what I was talking about. So I sat with that for many, many years and lived my life seeing some things that I took for granted that everybody saw, and seeing other things that clearly nobody else was seeing, and
Right.
trying to make sense of it. I do
Right.
believe that our path, our spiritual practice, our path, don't you feel, Sandy, maybe you don't feel, so I'll just ask the question. Do you feel that our path finds us, or that
Oh,
we
absolutely.
go out and look for the path?
No, it finds us, kicking and screaming. It drags us right to it, and that's what I'm saying is that it identified me to have an identity that I didn't know how to wear it. I didn't know how to be it. I knew I was it. And I think that's very important, because the same with you. One of the great things when you say we don't know what we're seeing, if it's kind or generous, I had so many horrible, horrible experience of screaming bloody murder as a child, and, watching these things scurry into the closet, or, disappear or incinerate. One of the nights that something good came, my mother used to sleep in my sister's. We had twin beds, and it was a firmer bed than my mother's, and her back was out. So she was sleeping in my sister's bed, and she wasn't quite asleep yet. And all of a sudden she heard me say, "Who's there? Who's there?" And she chickened out, the bitch. I swear. She put her head underneath the cover. She was like, "Whoa, what do you mean, who's there?" And she lifted her head and she watched me crawl to the end of my bed. So I might have been in the fourth, fifth grade, and look over the bed and literally say, "Oh, it's you." Okay. And I went back and laid down. And she told me the next day that she literally had to make peace with, well, if I thought it was okay, then it was okay. Because she had phenomena in her life also. We knew our house was loaded with stuff. But it's like that place of, how do we hold a vibration of when things were becoming good? I want to really talk about that, because that took me until I was 22 to know that, okay, the angels were around us, or our spirit guides were around us, and not all these entities were not, are they UFOs, or are they boogeymen, or are they ghosts? That they had other identities of qualifiable goodness to them. And not all of them had to be angels to be good. That they were, that's when the education started to, there's more out there than what we've been told. And as there was a very limited resource.
Mm-hmm.
It was good or bad.
Right.
And that's sad, because I didn't know how to edit that.
Mm-hmm.
Not in the dark.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to. I had no discernment for it. And when you felt the man around you, I mean, beings came and would touch me. Things would be right close up against my face, looking at me, so that when I opened my eyes, I would see it. I mean, how familiar were these beings with you, Dana?
Well, some of them, and Julie McMahon, if you are listening to the show this evening, you've heard Barb Seer talk about this. When I was little and Dad was stationed in Vietnam, I would talk to children on the playground that for me, were very much there, or I would sing. And Barbie, who was a lot older than me, said that she and my older cousins would just watch me talk to kids that they couldn't see, and they just thought that I was just odd.
Right.
They didn't tell me that until I was an adult, thankfully, so I didn't have a complex as a kid. But
Right.
I assumed everybody saw all those kids on the playground, and they were friendly. I wasn't afraid of any of those children. I was just
Right.
unaware that I was aware and others weren't.
Now, Bobby, my husband, literally used to see a girl sitting in a tree with her kind of poodle skirt and buckskin shoes and her hair in a little bob. And he talked to her all the time, and nobody saw him but her. Mm-hmm. And it took him. So, men and women have the same experience. It's how does anybody explain you're talking to and he didn't feel she was a ghost. Can we talk about that for a minute?
Yeah.
What's the difference between a visiting person that hasn't crossed over yet? That's not haunting. That's not, dragging the chains or trying to, expel somebody from the house. Yeah.
So an earthbound spirit.
There you go.
Well, there are spirits. There are a lot of spirits that are earthbound for a variety of reasons. They are earthbound. Some die instantly and don't realize that they've crossed over. Others ain't going because they are bound and determined to stay attached to the things of this world. For a variety of reasons. And quite frankly, in the West, here in the United States, a large portion of us have forgotten how to properly prepare, bury, and send, our beloveds onward to the ancestors. It is a lost art, which is why I teach soul minding, to teach people again, to help them relearn the importance of preparing for death, or if there was no time for preparation, to help our loved ones get to where they're going in the process, because there's a process when we die. But
the Tibetan Book of the Dead really helps with that. And there's the hospice now is talking on how to do that. There's so many ways that we in our Americanism have been taken away from the care of someone passing away in the house.
Yes.
Or how the body takes time to leave itself or transition or find its way.
Yes.
And so the earthbound spirit, when you talk about it, and when it wants to talk to us, when I really started channeling, I was actually channeling earthbound spirits that were asking for where am I, where my family, and giving them that opportunity not just to find their way to the light, but even to find out what direction they wanted to be guided toward. So I wasn't just saying you've got to go this way. It's like what do you even believe in?
Yes.
Who are you waiting for?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a lost generosity, quite frankly, to have us not be frightened of sitting with someone who's passed away or being with someone who's passing away. And, it kind of got homogenized over the years when our elders no longer lived with us. It's like, for years, didn't grandmothers live with the family and help out with the kids and died in the house? I mean, that's what they did in Europe.
And they did in this country, too, for a great long time, yes.
For a great long time. Mm-hmm. And something in the 50s and the 60s, poo-pooed on that, where it was independence. You kind of got torn away from that tradition of you recycle within the very place you were born. So there's that beauty of sitting with my father. I want to talk about this for a minute, because sitting with my father when he died, being with him, I moved into the hospital room for 3 days and literally lived in the chair and slept in the chair and ate in the hospital. It was quite a process to be able to, as a seer, not just be part of his dying, but to be able to be with him as he elevated from his conscious mind into that incredible, beautiful space of his own soul, understanding and comprehending who he was. That, to me, when we do our mediumship work, is where we are so often in being able to have others teach us that elevated thinking, that expanded thinking. And what do you say about the vibration of someone that's just talking about, I'm a lost soul versus I'm an elevated being? How do you register that in your seeing?
When somebody in spirit tells me they're a lost soul?
Well, you deal with a lot of mediumship as far as people who have passed away.
Yes.
And, parents come, beloveds come. I do mediumship. But there's also that place of when they're no longer talking about, I only love you and I hope you're okay. But they have elevated their awareness on the other side.
Mm-hmm. And when that happens, as they're making their way back, I believe, to the realm of our ancestors, when, all along they're processing lifetimes of being human or a lifetime of being human and working through what the soul came here to learn and working through the ways in which it did learn. There is an elevation in the consciousness of those spirits. And oftentimes, when I see those beloveds that come to me, I always say they're a little more shimmery.
Yes.
And a little more pristine and clear. Shimmery because they're finding their way closer and closer to the realm of the ancestors that exist in the cosmic oceans and seas, that exist in the star dust, if you will. And those that are earthbound, they feel more dense yet because they are more dense. They're bound to this astral plane and have not progressed in their ether to the higher planes, because our consciousness doesn't go away. And if our consciousness is not working through its issues on this plane, we can be called dense, right? And the same thing is true when we leave our body. We can still be very dense.
Right.
So there is a feeling, and there are feelings of, particularly when I am working with someone who passed away via suicide. For me, the way that I interpret that, or it comes through to me, is that I see them in black and white. There is no color. And in that black and white, I know I am being asked for a judgment, either black or white. And I will say to them, I have no judgment about the way that you passed.
Right.
So please come, and you are invited to be here. And then it goes from black and white to technicolor. So one of the things that happens for people such as yourself and me is that we gain a sense of spiritual language, don't we?
Right. And a familiar out of repetition.
Yes.
And practice and exposure, where we become familiar with what it is we're seeing and the dialogue that we're seeing it in, because there becomes a dialogue that's visual.
Yes.
And in that visual, then it's like, oh, if I see that, then I know that that's what it is. It's like the visionary dictionary. You go to a dictionary and you look up a word. Well, we can go to those realms and look up a vibration.
Yes.
So, and I agree with you. There's, when I really started seeing nature spirits, that shimmer was very present. And I loved living in New England at that point, because the mist literally would sit on the form of the spirit, the being, and outline them with a glistening. And so there's the refracted light from the sun and the drops of the water, or the crystalline kind of energy, the saline, it's the salt in our bodies, however you want to say it. But that vibration, even for me, is part of the corona, the aura, the beginning of that kind of like the halo of a being, because it is so vibrant.
Mm-hmm.
And in that space, I know that I'm speaking to an elevated, enlightened being. And it doesn't mean they're enlightened. They're lightening up also.
I like that.
They're lightening up. And I witnessed that with my father, that he was lightening up. And then when he did pass, there was a mist in the room that was actually a rose-colored mist. It was not there before the minute while he was still breathing, and it was there after, within seconds of him being gone. So, when the soul releases, we feel things also. And you were talking about this in our conversation this morning. Right now, I have a feeling that that's what's happening here in the northern states with fall. The leaves are falling. The plants are dying. They have another vibration. They have another radiance to them, and it's vibrant.
Mm-hmm.
And they are talking to us.
Yes.
We're listening to them. So you want to talk about that a little bit, because it's a magical tone of vibration.
Mm-hmm. It is magical, and it goes along with something that I've practiced for many, many years, and that is, as a seer, what is nature showing me?
Yes.
Literally, what is nature showing me? And with autumn, I think about the autumn of my life and how oftentimes at the time of croning, or as we're entering the autumn of our lives, it's when we become exceptionally vibrant, like the autumn leaves. And the autumn leaves in their vibrancy also pick a time to let go. And in the letting go, when I watch leaves fall, every time I watch leaves fall, it always reminds me to ask myself, what is it that you need to let go of? What are you prepared to let go of? And perhaps right now is the time to purposefully or consciously let go of something. Every time I look at that.
That is a very astute observation, and I would say it has a harmony to the awareness of what we are to experience.
Yes.
How do we let go? There is such a nostalgic feeling when leaves fall.
Yes.
It's romantic, it's nostalgic, it's elevated and sad all at the same time.
Mm-hmm. It is interesting because there is always a bit of melancholy, even with, the bounty of color, but the smells of death in the air, or I should say of decay in the air, also brings a bit of melancholy that we're asked to balance and to become aware of.
Very much, very much. And in that melancholy, there's, that's when all of a sudden we want to feel cozy. We want to have a closeness. We want to feel comfort and be comforted.
Well, yes, we want to go to Vermont and have pancakes with Vermont maple syrup and fresh butter. Todd is in here licking his lips. Yes, we do. And we don't want to do that in the summer. We want to do that in Vermont in the autumn.
Exactly. Stuart and John's, downtown New Hampshire.
You got it.
I just went, not the other day.
Best blueberry pancakes in the world. Yes.
Yes. My God. And so, hi, Todd. So there's that hearth that starts to also know, I want to shut down.
Yes.
I don't want to be just a ta-da. It's kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
It's and spirits do something different in the fall and in the winter than they do in the spring and the summer. So even that spirituality, that sense of intimacy goes deeper.
Yes.
And they're here longer because the sun is gone. It's that a lot happens in that twilight of the dawn and the dusk.
It does. In the place of betwixt and between, oftentimes for me is where I find, right at dusk, most any time, but particularly at this time, because we're entering into the time of the ancestors and ancestral veneration. But for me, this is the time when spirit really amps up sending messengers to me.
Yes.
And either you see them as messengers or you think of them as a mundane happening. But before this evening, the events of this evening, I was in, my goddess bathroom downstairs in the jacuzzi. And all of a sudden, I was thinking about what I was going to be engaging in next in conversation, and then our show tonight. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Iktomi. I saw spider. And it was a pretty good size spider. And I was covered in bubbles and just having a relaxing bath. And rather than, squash a spider, because I don't do that anyway, but I realized that there was a teaching that I was to sit and to watch and to observe and to see beyond what I was physically seeing. And first and foremost, I acknowledged her. Because, when you were dealing with spirit, acknowledging and having gratitude for the interaction only helps to amplify what's going to happen. So I thanked her for being present there on the ledge of my jacuzzi tub. And honestly, Sandy, she sat there and she looked at me with her little beady eyeballs. And I just sat with spirit. What is it that you've sent grandmother here to teach me? What is it that I'm to learn from her? And I sat and I listened to spirit, because sometimes we as seers, we not only see, but we hear, or we know, we feel.
Yes.
And so I knew that she was a messenger that had come on purpose. For you, Sandy, when I say sometimes we don't necessarily see, but we feel or we hear, and in the hearing and the feeling we see, how is that for you? How do those senses play out for you as a seer?
Well, I think it's really quite prominent in my body that it has the opportunity or the ability to talk to me in, my goosebumps on my goosebumps, the hair rises up, that a gut feeling in the pit of my stomach, also with a sound that's not the familiar way that we listen, the sound that kind of says, pay attention to the realm. The difference that I'm talking about. It's not a sound I'm familiar to. It's almost like a tone that says there's something here. And you have to be aware of the fact that the vibration of that tone is like a dog whistle. It's not audible to people. When my body talks to me, it's actually a better informant than sometimes my intuition, because I could be distracted and not listening, and also, quite frankly, self-edit. And in my humanness, it's kind of like I can hear something or see something or experience something and go, did I, should I, will I, can I, do I wanna, da, da, da. But if my body gets it, there's no fooling around. When something affects my body, then I know that this is bigger than my mind has the time to dismiss or to edit or to even question. And when my body feels it, I'm very clear one of two things happen. I either go completely still, or I move toward it so I can be involved with it or away from it.
Mm-hmm.
And And so my body has, as a child, was a better instrument, like a tuning fork for me. Because if my body didn't feel scared, and I mean that in the way that a child gets scared to where they quiver or have to. How many times did you wake up as a child trying to scream and nothing came out of your mouth?
Oh, I did, and so did my daughter. Yes, the silent scream. Yes, I witnessed her often.
Petrified.
Yes.
And my body absolutely frozen stiff, unable to move. Where I'm awake and my body's not able to move yet, screaming, pulling my body back into my body. So the physicality of being a seer or a experiencer, a vibrational interactive being, I learned the hard way, through the simplicity of it's happening. It's just happening. And then trying to figure it out and trying to make peace with the fact that I couldn't stop it from happening. That to me is that place of having the identity identify me that said, this is who you are, you better deal with it. This is what you have to do, you better learn about it. This is what wants you to participate with it. So come and figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Come learn. And it wasn't just learning through people teaching. It was learning by being in the experience with them and figuring out what the realm was doing with me. So, like you, there's that really deep place of we're born with something, but it's not always polite.
It isn't always polite. You're right about that.
Yeah, so we have to kind of go through the spectrum of, well, it's not always a sunny day outside either.
and oftentimes, whether it's seeing, hearing, feeling, knowing, sensing, intuition, call it what you will, oftentimes it's part of the bloodline, it's part of our ancestry. And it's not only we who are experiencing the phenomena, but it can also be the ancestors that we carry in our blood and our bones that are experiencing it with us. And so we're being informed in many layers oftentimes. You said that your mother also had a proclivity for spiritism.
Well, my whole family did, Dana. And It's interesting. My father had it. My mother had it. We all had it to some degree, but it became my life. And we all were aware of the fact that our house had entities in it. The chuckly one was Madeline the maid that was, inside the dishwasher. My mother was very intuitive and very curious and very challenging. And two things happened that were really quite blatant. One was she was asking for a ghost, and she finally said, well, if there's really a ghost in the house, I want it to come through the dishwasher. And the damn thing did. And so it was
wow.
And so my mother called Madeline the maid because I got the goosebumps even talking about it. Stay on Adam's lane. Go back home.
Wow.
Yes. And then also through the Ouija board. I mean, I'm from the generation where the Ouija board was like, ooh.
Mm-hmm.
And you played with it and, but you played with it. Well, on Thanksgiving Eve one year, my mother and I got it out. We were working with it, and it took over. It was one of those things that when my mother said, where are you coming from? And that little vial turned around and pointed at me, and she got that thing up and she put it in the closet. She's not always ever touching that thing again. So something was channeling through me working on the Ouija board.
Wow.
And so, we found these things out kind of in the curiosity of poking fun at it, or being curious in a way of, let's see if we create something.
Uh-huh.
But now it's much more respectful. And I'm grateful that spirituality or this mediumship is not just, something that table tipping or the phenomena taking advantage of people, that it's become exactly what you're talking about. The ancestors are back saying that this is dignified. This is our history. This is our cellular connection.
Yes.
So, well, there you go. And my belching, obviously, if anybody knows me, my body belches when I really talk with spirit, or spirit comes through me. And so there's that place where the dignity of spirituality in the ancestral bloodline or the cellular bloodline is before all the quote unquote religious organizations either told us it was this, and if it wasn't that, it was bad. We harmonized with nature and spirit on a realm of familiar that I think I grieve for.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people are grieving for it. And it has in some ways become a crisis.
I believe that, Dana.
Yeah.
And because of the elevation of coming into the out of the Piscean in the Aquarian, we are grieving for a cellular connection to what's happening with our globe, what's happening with our planet, the life force of the planet, what's happening with, people dying so fast right now,
Mm-hmm.
and the wipeout because we don't have the time for the ceremony for those that have died. I mean, something is really right now very clever about getting our attention,
Mm-hmm.
and seeing how distorted things have become,
Mm-hmm.
and need to return to.
Yes. And I believe that we are returning to. Hey, Lily. Lily's in the house. Jessica is in the house.
Ese hombre amigo, ¿cómo está?
It's good to have both of the...
Tell her we were just talking pancakes, please.
Yeah, we were just talking about Vermont pancakes, please.
Oh,
yeah.
God.
Well, you're right about that. And so there is a dignified return to being a dignified part of our ancestry, not the cuckoo part of our ancestry, but bringing back the dignity through the understanding of what it has always been. Because there are a lot of lost souls walking around every day. I feel that there are more lost souls walking around in a body than there are lost souls that have left their body.
Well, I really believe COVID has done that, where people have died so abruptly and have been shoved in refrigerators, in trucks, in, the memorials are not done, the funerals are not done. The touching of the beloved is not even allowed. They're out of reach of something that would comfort them or live beyond them.
Right.
The last breath is not exchanged between a beloved or a family member. So there's been a snap away from something that is in need to let go. How do I want to say this? Something needs to be brought to our attention, because exactly what you're saying, there is a congestion right now of lost souls or attached souls, because they were resisting dying.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
mm-hmm.
I have to say that that's fair to qualify with
Mm-hmm.
COVID. That so many people were resisting dying because of the shock of getting so sick so quick and not even knowing what it was.
Exactly.
And thinking that it wasn't real.
Right. And so what that leaves us with is the anointing of our beloveds after they have left their body. And very few here in the United States know how to do that, or even what that is, or that it's a reality that can be worked with.
Right.
I mean, you and I understand it, our students understand it, those like us understand it, but we're a very small population of people. But I believe we're helping to wake up a greater population of people to the fact that, the anointing of spirit, whether it's done physically or once they've left the spiritual body, in a variety of practices, there's not just one way, of course, of doing that, but it is necessary.
It's amazing. A very dear friend of mine died. God, this was about 5-6 years ago, and she just thought she had the flu. She just got in bed and she didn't know what she had, and all of a sudden a friend said, "You're sicker than you should be," and they went to the hospital, and it turned out that she was septic. And so they, had to do all that stuff. Todd knows what septic means and the threshold that represents. And so they kind of got her on the turn with all the medicine that she needed to have, but her body couldn't tolerate the shock, and she passed away. Everybody was sent home because they said she's going to make it, she's fine, let her rest, go home. Everybody can come back in the morning, and they called the family at night and said she died. So the shock of her going and that nobody was with her. What happened, and the reason I'm saying that is that for whatever reason, she's here right now, kind of like giving that guidance of everybody was so shocked that she passed away that when I heard, all Bobby and I could do was get to the house, like, let's get to them. And some of her friends were at the house, and where's the family? Well, they're at the funeral home. Okay, let's just go. Bobby and I just went. They were so in shock. They were going to send the body to cremation without any kind of prayer or touch or contact. And we're walking out of the funeral parlor because they just made the, okay, we'll do this, we'll do this, we'll do that. And I finally said, "Is she here?" And they said, "Yes, she is." And I said, "Would you like a prayer for her? Would you like me to bless her?" Dana, the innocence and naivety of like, oh my God, yes. It was, where are the holy people? I guess I don't know what I want to say. I want to say we just don't know what we're supposed to do sometime out of the normalcy.
Right. Yes.
Of you put your hand on them, whether you want to see them or not. And for me to go to her and put my hand on her, to bring the warmth, the conduit, the touch, and to give the family the opportunity to have the circle around her. It was, if something, I'd have to say that God bless her, she pulled me to them to have that moment for them from her.
Beautiful.
So there is, yes, and I have to say I'm saying this for the first time the way I'm saying it. So for some whatever reason, her anniversary is coming up on the 4th of October, so we're right there. I think it's really beautiful that it's taken this long for me to see that what she did was say, "Sandy, could you get over here so my family can have peace?" So here we are. Please, anybody that's out there listening, those beloveds that have died from COVID or the shock or the surprise of what we've been going through for the past, couple of years, even if it wasn't from COVID, but they were in the hospital and you couldn't get to them. There's that call from them to come and touch, come be a part of something because they're still present. They're still available to have that with. The intimacy, not just, oh my God, I couldn't touch, I couldn't get in. That kind of grief is even deeper than the grief of that they died because you couldn't say goodbye.
Exactly. Precisely. Connecting with our loved ones in spirit can happen, anytime. And I believe, I taught a class on this earlier today for my Patreons. In connecting with spirit anytime, that's holy work, that's sacred work.
Absolutely.
And so whether you're out in the meadow picking flowers and you begin to think of your uncle or your auntie or what have you, your sister who's passed on, that's a sacred moment in the meadow. And the beauty of what the seer sees is that we see and we understand that the lines of communication are sometimes even more open after someone has left their physical body, because maybe they weren't open to that conversation or that bit of ceremony or love.
Absolutely. We're more vulnerable.
Yes.
And we do at times seek to be extended, not just shut down and so self-aware. Something happens in that vibration that invites our consciousness to become bigger.
Yes. And for those that have passed in that way, not everybody who passes on is a saint. We know that. But oftentimes, if they weren't willing to listen or participate in any kind of loving kindness, perhaps they're even more awakened, aware, and open to participating in that once they no longer have their physical body. So communication sometimes is actually better after someone has left the physical body. And I tell people, set a sacred space, even if that means a sacred space with a tea light candle in the bathtub, whatever that is for you.
Exactly. Or when a spider crawls up on the side, make sure it's like, don't kill it because it's going to be George.
Exactly. So, or maybe the sacred moment happens when you're looking at a photograph of someone that you love and
yes.
speaking the words out loud or speaking them silently in your heart. I always attribute the word octave to you. Yeah. But even if you're speaking to your beloveds who have passed on in the octave of heart language, that message is received.
Yes. And that it's an act of love at times that is actually more sensationally experienced than when we feel the love when people are present. Because it's not restricted to, you have to get up and cross the room to touch somebody. They can enter you. They can caress you. They can, and that goes back to, the experience that our body registers. How many times have you uncontrollably started to cry or feel tears or feel that choke up when someone comes to talk to the beloved from the other side because they are getting forgiveness or asking forgiveness or have the equipment now to communicate in ways that they didn't when they were in their physical body?
Yes. Often. That's why I tell people, if you love somebody, tell them that you love them. And if you didn't tell them that you love them, or maybe you were angry with them, but you loved them anyway, or you didn't approve of the way they behaved, but you loved them anyway, tell people that. Right. And you can still be upset and angry after they pass on. And all of that is okay. It doesn't negate the feelings of the person left behind to feel any sort of way. But do that before they leave if you can. And if you can't, have the conversation after they've passed. But you're right. It's when I facilitate a conversation between the living and those that have left their physical body, and it's a conversation about forgiveness or a conversation about, I wish I would have told you that I loved you while I was there. For me, sometimes that's the most emotional for me.
Yes.
Because it's the feeling of love mixed with the feeling of regret.
And we, as the medium or the channel, experience the vibration of the emotion in our body.
Yes.
It's not outside us.
No.
It's inside us.
Yes.
And it's overwhelming at times because I know I have the capacity to experience emotions, and mine are vast. So that when somebody else comes in and uses my body to activate and to radiate and transmit, amen, that this ability to represent their emotion is gifted to the person that is hoping the person who passed away is even present.
Yes.
Can be found. And it goes right back to the movie Ghost, when Whoopi Goldberg, took her hand, and you saw that black hand and the white hand, and then all of a sudden you saw her hand and Patrick Swayze's hand. I mean, when I first saw that, Dana, it was like I literally told my friend, someone got that right.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Del Marie is in the chat room, and she is sharing in Lakota way. Traditionally, we are supposed to be by ourselves for 4 days, stay in prayer for 4 days, and do it in the 4 directions. That really doesn't happen hardly anymore.
Yeah.
Some of the traditions are being lost.
Right. And Lily, I want to honor you because you are so good with the Day of the Dead. The way that you've described to me the beauty of that and the ceremony of it and the grace of having that day. Not everybody knows what to do with that. It's, it would have been seen as macabre for some religions watching that. And to hear the way that you do that, Lily, is so deeply emotional and necessary, because somebody needs to be able to hold that altar.
Yes. And I learned from her mother, Delfina. She came to the school to teach about Dia de los Muertos. And she did such a phenomenal job of teaching us how to build an ancestor altar for veneration and remembrance. And, there are other countries that do that. Germany, parts of Scandinavia. It almost looks like the same ceremony, just on the other side of the world.
Exactly.
But I feel like, to what Del Marie is talking about, it's being lost because it no longer holds value. For some.
So just say that a little bit more in detail, what you're saying, because there's a place where, for me, it's lost respect from those that don't understand the potency of it.
Yes.
It's been minimized.
Yes, and I guess that's what I'm saying. It's lost value. It's been minimized. It doesn't hold the same amount of value as being present to social media, or it's taken a back burner to those sorts of things. But our ancestors right now, in this time that we're living in this time of, welcoming the 8th generation, the ancestors are saying, hold up, everybody.
Yeah.
Hold up.
Pay attention.
Pay attention. And we're speaking to you. We're trying to speak through you.
Exactly.
Have been for quite some time. And the magic is returning, but the magic is only as powerful as the wattage of the ancestors that you are connected to. If you ain't connected to your ancestors in any sort of way, your magic isn't worth diddly squat anyhow, right? Because they work through you.
Go, girl.
Yeah. I'll get off the pulpit because I do that sometimes. But
that's okay.
What I'm saying is that there's a new direction, and the direction is inward, and the direction is that of connectedness. And I'll never forget my Chue, my elder sister, Del Marie, who's in the chat room, telling me one time she was with one of the aunties. And I don't know if it was it Aunt B, Del, or Ma Rita? But they were talking about the words Mitakoye Oyasi, Mitakuyasin, we are all related. And one of the aunties, one of the moms said, you can say that word all you want, but you need to live those words.
Right.
You need to live those words, and that's the time that we're in right now. We're in the time of the seer.
Right.
And we as seers are teaching people, hopefully, maybe at least a couple of people, that there's a lot to see.
Right.
And feel and touch and know that it's alive. That's where the magic begins. Yeah.
It's a lost art.
Yeah.
When I sat with you in the Anipi with Barb and Dell, and the men were singing, it was one of the first sweats I was in with you, and the sisters were so pristine in saying, it is nice that you are praying through your songs, but learn how to enunciate each of the words, because each word is alive.
Mm-hmm.
It means something. And so that enunciation, the respect of learning how to say a word, sound a word, represent a word, I think that's, to stop being lazy.
Mm-hmm. Well, and to be aware.
Exactly.
That in and of itself is awareness. And I remember Gary doubling up on his efforts to really, learn.
Absolutely.
Even more
I
at that
it
time.
was in that moment.
Yeah.
It was in that moment.
He became aware.
I watched him get it.
Yeah.
It was like he got lasered.
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful reprimand without making any shame.
Well, and that's very typical of my Lakota relatives, is that they don't shame in teaching. There is no, gee, you dummy, or you really look like a boob. Right. Always what I have learned in all of my many years now, 15 going on 16 years, is that the teachings are very potent, but they are always delivered gently and in a way that there is no shame, no blame, no humiliation. And that's one of the things that I love most about my relatives, is that.
Right.
But the awareness of the words. I remember my Chue Della bad wound saying to me, because I was saying the word white buffalo calf woman, I was saying Te Sawi. And she corrected me that the S-A-N, or I was saying something, it should have been Te Sawi. And she corrected me and she said, what you're saying is gray buffalo calf woman. If you want to say white buffalo calf woman, you have to say it this way. And she didn't, she took me aside and just out of wanting me to know it the correct way.
Right.
Because who am I calling on? There's a difference between the gray buffalo calf woman and the white buffalo calf woman. So if you're calling to spirit as a seer or a ceremonialist, know who you're calling to, because that's who's going to come visit you.
Right. And the language is an art form of that frequency, that tone, that harmony.
Yeah.
That, when you sing off key, you're off key, and when you're on key, you're on key. And so it doesn't mean you have to be a perfect singer, but that the intent to say it. Spirit is very forgiving when they understand your intention. And it is so beautiful to know that they're, listening to someone learn a language. The intention is my desire to communicate and be respectful. But that's where our accents come from. No matter what we do. I mean, New York is in me if you ask me about a cup of coffee. So it's like
there it was. There it is.
So, I could be saying a really, really wonderful thing, but my accent is going to be coming true.
That's right.
So, it still holds the vibration of our intent.
Right.
And that is that conduit of the lightning striking in the perfect place. That our intention of our goodness or our I may not know what I'm doing, but my meaning of wellness is pure.
Yeah.
And then we are embraced and we're brought into that. Well, let's learn. Let's go slow. You don't have to know, but it is good to learn.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Well, Sandy, it's been a great conversation tonight, as always.
Okie dokie.
Great conversation this morning. Great conversation tonight.
Yeah. Yeah. Both ends in the middle. Oh, God. Okay, well, I'm looking forward to our class. It's coming up.
It is coming up. So again, if you want to take a class with Sandra and I called Subtle Mediumship, it will be a series via webinar. Check it out at theschoolofsacredstudies.com, and please go to the webinar page. We would love to have you join us. I'm excited about it.
I am too. I mean, and having this conversation to you just made me realize that's a lot of teaching we got ahead of us.
We got a lot of teaching ahead of us. That's right.
Woo!
Have a great night, everybody.
Good night, everybody. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And, welcome to fall, because here come the holidays. So I'll say it now. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. We'll be there real soon.
Have a good night, San.
Good night, Dana. Bye-bye, Todd. Bye, Lily.